There we go. Okay, great.
All right. Well, again, thank you for the time. I appreciate the opportunity to get together here. Always love talking about how I started at the company because it was not the beginning that I had anticipated with COVID. And just kind of bring things into the full landscape. I graduated from Florida Atlantic University back in winter time or fall time of 2019. So Granite was my first job out of college. And I had been looking at a couple of different careers, but I was steered this way due to the fact that I have telecom experience in my family. My stepfather, he actually he's an executive for AT&T, and he's come up against Granite various times throughout his career. So he told me, hey, you should definitely give Granite a shot. They have a good reputation, and it could be a good start to your career in sales. So I gave it a shot, and it was definitely the best decision that I could make. So I started up in the company in February of 2020, and maybe about a month into my start at Granite, COVID hit. So they sent everybody home. I was not able to be in the office like most, or if not all of you are in the office today. So that was definitely not to my benefit because I didn't get the full experience when it comes to being face to face with your team, having that team camaraderie. So over the course of my first couple of months, I was completely remote. And it was definitely an experience, and I really attribute to all of my success coming directly from the training team. Basically, if there's anything that you ever may need to get some personal one-on-one training with, the training team is willing to do that. They're very friendly, very personable, and again, they'll go one-on-one with you, so it's not like you're just working in a group all the time. And I almost felt like, especially throughout school and college, when you're learning from a teacher, not everybody learns the same way. So it really helps when you're able to get that individual expertise, and getting that from the training team, because really that's the way that you're going to learn. And just moving forward in my time at Granite, so my first year in 2020 was definitely the learning experience, and my year of learning, I would say. It was my first job in sales. I did financial planning before this, so I was definitely working face to face with a lot of the clients that were in the finance industry. So I wasn't I guess new to the whole salesy type of role, but Granite definitely gave me a lot of the skills as well as all of the abilities that I have today in order to produce good sales numbers. Was all due to the time that I had been learning my first year at the company. So first year was definitely a learning experience. I didn't have as much success as I am having now my first year. And that's just due to the fact that I had never been in a sales role that was exclusively just phone sales, face-to-face sales, over the computer. So it was definitely a learning experience, but I really, kept working as hard as possible and just kept the ball moving forward, because ultimately in any occupation you have, that's the best thing that you can do, is just keep working as hard as you can. And through Granite, really that's ultimately how I've been able to achieve all the success that I have today. Is really just due to the fact that I would say, outworked my competition, or outworked everybody else. Not many of the individuals that I initially started up with at the company are even with Granite still. And it's not because Granite's not a good company. It's not because Granite wasn't able to fulfill their desires. I would say maybe like 95% of the time it was because they didn't want to put in the work. And sales is definitely a job you got to work hard for. And here Granite is no different. And I've learned that through a lot of the more experienced reps than myself. I've only been at Granite for about 2.5, coming up on 3 years in this next February. So it's definitely been a good time, and the best way to learn is from those experienced reps that have really been at the company for a pretty long time and have shown that they could succeed. So that really is how I've been able to grow. Fast forwarding to 2021, last year, I had definitely a lot more success than I did in 2020. Started closing my first couple of deals, coming up on the 1 year mark. However, I was a little bit different than some of the other individuals that were on my team. A lot of the folks on my team, they were closing deals within just a few months of being at the company. But for me, it took me at least 9 to 10 months before I even started seeing some deals go through. So the thing that I could tell you is it's not an over the night process. This really is like it's a long duration for you to be able to see your success come into fruition. But the fact of the matter is, as soon as I hit my 1 year mark, I had so many deals just start to close that I was like, this is why I've stayed this entire time. And started to see success, started to see the revenue go up for my book of business. And when that happens, you start to make a lot more money. So not only is it a good learning experience, really the money, and I'm pretty sure that's pretty, why most people are in sales, is because they want to make good money. And this has given me the opportunity in order to do that. And I've just been real thankful and grateful for everyone that's helped me get here, my training, my director, our vice presidents, and even Rob Hill, our CEO. I've had many conversations with Rob already, and I've only been at the company for 2.5 years, and I don't even work in the Quincy office. I work in West Palm Beach. So it's nice to have people that are way up on the scale to be able to get one-on-one with you and even just have personable conversations and make you feel important. I know my stepfather, he's worked at AT&T for about 25 years or so. And he's never had a conversation with his CEO. He's never had, high level discussions with people that are high up in the company. And Granite's just, we're a lot different than, any of the other companies. So moving on into now. 2022 had an even better year than 2021. Kept my work and my effort up as much as possible. And this year I was actually I was actually pulled aside by some of these sales ops individuals that came down to visit us about a month and a half ago, and they let me know that I was ranked first in the entire company for appointments booked. So that was pretty much my biggest achievement of this year, and that leads to deals. So as I mentioned, sales is definitely a long, it's a process. Sometimes it's shorter than others, but you first started off by making good strategic calls, and that really starts with making sure you're putting in as much effort as possible, working, long hours every single day, which when you first start, it helps out when you do work a little bit longer than, 8 to 5. I sometimes have been working at like 7 in the morning and haven't even left until 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. So it is definitely, you get out what you put in. And really working those long hours has helped me book more appointments than anyone else in the company. And then those appointments that I have booked has then created opportunities for Granite to help win business. And that's ultimately why I've been able to grow my book so quickly in such a short amount of time. And I would say that's, pretty much the main reason why I'm here today, is because I've just been working as hard as I can, and it showed. And the more that you work, the harder you work, you're going to be given more opportunities from your team. So, sometimes you get lucky when you get a deal. But ultimately, the way that you're going to be successful at Granite is if you just work as hard as possible. And that's, something I wanted to share with you guys today. As far as, I guess, like my ultimate wins and biggest wins, I don't have very many large customers. I have maybe 50, 60 customers that are small to medium size, and that's how I've been able to grow my book of business. But I've also had teammates that have gotten a customer that's half their entire book, and that's why their book of business is $20,000. So sometimes you get lucky with a big whale, but ultimately, if you have a good process, you're going to be able to get those consistent wins, and consistency is really how you succeed over here at Granite. And with consistency, you will get the opportunity to get some big whales, and I know that's why a lot of people are still at the company after working here for 5+ years, is because they have some big whales that they're consistently getting more business from. And when we get more business, that means more money in your pocket. And that's definitely a reason to stay. And then I would say basically like steps for winning, I kind of touched on that already, was making sure you're consistent with everything. So this is a process. It's not an over the night type of deal. The more consistent you are with your process and how you strategize your day, your week, your month, and your year, I think it's really important to set goals. As I mentioned previously, I was in financial planning, so set goals all the time for other clients and individuals, and also myself. So I think before you even get your day started, it's good to evaluate what you need to get done, not only for yourself, but just to make sure that you are prioritizing everything. Because once you get to a point as myself, I feel like I could be working 24/7 and still not keep up with everything that I want to do. So it's all about prioritizing your day, making sure you're completing everything that you need to complete. That's really important. And then moving forward, also looking ahead to the week, month, and year, making sure you're setting the bar high for yourself. So that way, as you're progressing, you're not only improving your skills, but you're completing a lot of the objectives that you've previously set. And then also, when you do complete those objectives, you're setting new tasks and new goals for yourself. So that way you can just keep pushing the ball as hard as you can. Any questions thus far?
Actually, yeah, I do. I really like what you had to say about the hard work and the consistency and all that, but are there any other things, like what is hard work, other things that hard work looks like in your eyes at Granite, like extra stuff you can do to help see some results on the side?
Yeah, so it is a lot of the time it's putting in more dials. So when I first started at the company, it was very difficult for me to even reach 20 dials a day. And I was like, how can I increase, my opportunities to speak with people? And ultimately that's how you're going to get appointments booked, is it's a numbers game. So the more dials you put in, the more chances that you have to speak with people, and the more likely that you're going to get someone on the phone that's going to listen to you. Sometimes you have those days where you'll make, and now I'm at the point where I shoot for 100 dials every single day, but don't always get there. Sometimes, you have other meetings set. Sometimes you have good conversations with people that don't allow you to make as many calls as you're trying to make. But the entire goal is you want to have a number in your head of, okay, what call dial am I trying to hit today? Am I trying to hit, at first, again, I was struggling with getting to 20. So as soon as I got to 20, I said, all right, I'm going to set the bar for 30. The next day I come in, I'm going to try and get to 30 calls. I got to 30. Next day I'm going to come in, I'm going to set the bar for 40 calls. And then you just keep going higher and higher and higher. And now I feel like I'm at the rate where I try to shoot for 100 calls every day. And if you do get to 100 calls, you're more than likely going to have at least a couple of good, thorough conversations with individuals that are going to listen to you, or they're going to want to book another meeting with you to be able to get back together and potentially see what Granite can do for them to create some value. So I would say, as far as efforts, definitely putting in a little bit more calls than the other people that are at the company. I mean, there's people that are fine with, making the minimum amount of calls, and they're not a pusher. You'll come across that all the time, not even just in Granite, but people in general in life. But if you're going to consistently push yourself to try and see what potential you have, it's definitely going to be, if you are able to make as many calls as possible. It's also time. So maybe it's coming in 30 minutes, an hour before work gets going. So maybe you come in at 7:30 and you do research on the leads that you're going to be calling. So that's really important too, is just to make sure that you are being strategic and you're making sure that before you even call someone, you have an idea of who they are, the person that you're supposed to be reaching, and then also what they might be interested in. So here I'm working on the sled side, same as JJ, and sled is a little bit different than commercial. So when I am prospecting, really, it's making sure that I have a good idea of maybe their infrastructure, and you kind of get to know this through the different territories that you target, the different types of prospects that you are able to have conversations with, is that you get in a rhythm and you can kind of have a good idea of what they might be interested in speaking about. And that's really important just to continue the conversation, is just to be strategic about your calls. And again, if that makes, if that means you come in a little bit early or stay a little bit late just to do some research, that's ultimately going to help you succeed. And along with that, as far as effort goes, I would say it's really just, again, putting in the time, making sure that you're keeping up to date with all of your tasks, and then also being organized. So you can't just be prospecting and going around your day aimlessly. Again, it's really about being strategic, making sure that you have priorities that you're trying to complete for that day, and crossing them off as you go. So that's something that I think is really important as I go throughout every single day, is I assess what I need to get done. And then at the end of the day, I see what exactly I was able to complete, and kind of evaluate how much I was able to get traction.
Thank you.
Sure. Any additional questions at this point in time?
Yeah, I think like at a very basic level, since most of these guys are quite literally just starting out, I'd love to get a better insight through whether it's what your day plan looks like now, or maybe what it looked like when you first started. Just how you organized your day to really come in and find the most success out of the hours that you did spend when you were here. I think for new hires, that can be a little bit of a challenge. Like,
Right.
what do I do when I come in? How do I organize my day? How do I prioritize? So I'd love to hear how you started your day plan, and then maybe even how it's like changed and adapted since you first started.
Right. Yep, I can certainly touch on that. So I would say my first year, that's pretty much, I would say, what I struggled with the most. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation, so that way I could let you guys know that that's probably one of the main reasons why I was not able to close as many deals as I was wanting to in that first year that I was at Granite. And it's pretty much because I wasn't running around with my head cut off, but I almost felt like I wasn't assessing what I needed to get done that day. So how I get my day started, and I'll go from when I actually started at Granite from to what I'm doing today, is that I was walking in right at like 8 o'clock. So usually our day, we start at 8 and you leave at 5. And I would walk in at 8 and I would try to cram in all of my research, all of what I was trying to accomplish before I started getting my day going with my phone calls. I was only cramming that in into about 30 minutes. And I'm now looking back, that's something that I wish I would have been able to change. Sometimes, that's all you need is 30 minutes in order to get your day going. Maybe you don't have very many meetings set up and you're just prospecting for the entire day. And you don't maybe need, you don't need 30 minutes in order to get the day going. But I think it's really important, especially in the beginning, is to do your research on who you're calling, because that just gives you even more ammunition from when you get that person on the phone and you try to have a conversation with them. So like now I feel like I don't have to do as much research, more of because I have a better idea of how the discussion and how the conversation is going to go. And when I get someone on the phone, I feel way more comfortable now that I've had hundreds and thousands of conversations with people already. But in the beginning, it was a lot different. I wasn't as experienced with Granite terminology, didn't know the products very well. And I think that definitely attributed to me not being able to speak at much of a high level with a lot of the prospects I was able to get on the phone with. Whereas now I feel like I definitely have a good handle of the products, our solutions, the value add that we can bring to different types of organizations, and just being able to have a thorough conversation with someone. I felt like almost in the beginning, this is ultimately your goal, is to book another phone call or another meeting with the prospect that you're speaking to. But now I feel like I'm at a stage 2.5 years in, is if I get someone on the phone and they're going to speak with me, the last thing that I'm going to do is try to book another meeting with them. I mean, I will do that, but if I have them on the phone, I'm going to speak as long as I can with them just to make sure that they have a good understanding of the value that we can bring to them. And that makes them much more likely to continue on in the process. So sometimes it is okay to, you can skip steps like in a strategic way. So if someone is going to give you the time to speak and you have the ability of having a thorough conversation with them, maybe they'd be interested in even just skipping on to our second step, which is ultimately sending over invoices or even giving you some information for us to prepare a quote to review. And then what I usually do is, if that's the case, is I would book another meeting to go over the quote itself, or the numbers, what we can fiscally bring to the table by saving them money or consolidating their bills. And yeah, I mean, I feel like that's I've been able to cut out tons of time just by proceeding on to next steps, rather than saying, okay, well, I don't feel too comfortable with, speaking about this, so I'm just going to book a call with my director. It's like, oh, like, you're interested in this, here's what we can do for you. Our next steps, and this is something I would suggest, is send over the bills, or get information for us to prepare a quote. You just ask a lot more questions in order to get the process started. So I would say now, so before, again, I felt like I was almost cramming everything in, and was running around with an aimless type of day. And so those call blocks are important when you start. So usually you would do research before and after work, or before and after the call block hours, which the call block hours, it's 8:30 to 10:30. And then in the afternoon, 1:30 to 3:30. And so it's really important to be on the phone during those hours, mostly because those are the hours that you're going to more than likely get someone on the phone. And it's usually the hours that your brain's firing at better speeds, and you're able to function as high as possible when you do get someone on the phone. And now I'm at a point where I'm cold calling from, I'm a lot different than some of the other reps, but I'll literally cold call from like 8 o'clock to lunchtime. I think it's important to make sure to take at least a little break so your brain can get a rest. But I do cold call pretty much until like 5, 6 o'clock, until I leave. And then if there's any additional stuff that I have to get done, any type of research where I feel like now I don't have to do as much research as I was doing in the beginning, is that I just cold call as much as possible, because ultimately that's how you're going to be able to get people on the phone. Getting people on the phone means that they're going to be likely to either give you information that you need, or even just to keep the relationship growing in the right direction. So now, my day and my schedule, coming in at usually it's like 7:30, sometimes earlier, like 7 o'clock. I was doing all this week because we're getting to the end of the year and things are certainly crammed for time. I have a lot of opportunities I'm trying to keep in line as we've got people taking off for the holidays. I'm in the sled space, so you definitely have schools that are going to be out for the holiday season. So it's really important to prioritize that and understand that there's going to be people that are out of the office, especially when maybe you're still in the office. So you want to get a better idea of basically their process and asking those questions. So I've spent a little bit more time this week being able to get to the office earlier so I can get my day started. But I do most of my emails and my research I'll do before work. And then again, I'm cold calling from 8 to noon, or if I usually have a bunch of meetings scheduled. So I'm cold calling as soon as I get off of a meeting. I'm starting my cold calls again. It's not like I get off a meeting and I can chill and go to the restroom and do whatever I want to do. You really gotta work hard. And it's I see people, they'll have a meeting and then they'll take 10-20 minute break, which, I mean, sometimes you can do that, but if you like eliminate the amount of time that you take away from your prospecting, you're going to see an increase in the amount of opportunities that you start up. So again, I'm usually cold calling from when I have the opportunity to. So maybe like 8:15, 8:30 until about noon. Take the noon to 1 for my lunch break, and then from 1 to 1:30, maybe doing a little bit more research, but then usually just getting on the phone as quickly as possible. So yeah, I would say that's pretty much my day-to-day schedule now. And this is a job, like, you gotta love talking to people. You have to love being on the phone. And at first, I would definitely say this was not something that I felt so comfortable with doing, was having a conversation with someone on the phone. But now I feel like I've almost gotten into like a habit, or like a good addiction of being able to have conversations with people on the phone. So even sometimes I'll assess how many calls I'm at throughout the day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm only at 50 calls. I got to get to 75 before I leave. That means I got to put in 25 more dials, and then it just pushes me that harder in order to get to that number. Because again, the more dials you make, the more chances you have with being able to get people to listen.
Yeah, that's great. And I think like right out of the gates too, that's probably the best advice you could give someone, right? Like the more dials you make, the more opportunities you have just to have a conversation. From there to possibly book that next meeting to see what comes from that as well. So I think that's great advice, and hearing your process and how it's adapted as you've grown in your role has been really insightful. So I know we're right at 11:30. We're about to start our wrap up here, but Drew, thank you so much for your time this morning, and answering some of the questions here, and really just giving us some insight into what it was like starting here at Granite and then finding your own stride. So guys, if you could thank me or join me in thanking Drew. Drew, thanks again for your time this morning. It's very much appreciated.
Of course. Of course. And if anyone, you guys have questions as you're getting your career started here at Granite, feel free to give me a call, an email. I'm certainly here to be a resource, because I was once in your shoes not too long ago. There's people that have been at Granite for 10, 15 years. So I can relate to, any of your situations. If you're a recent graduate from college, ultimately it's nice to be in a company where people are willing to help. And, that's where people like myself step in. And, again, if you guys need help with anything, maybe you need some advice, or even you just want to get assistance with anything at all, I'm certainly here to be a resource. And it was a pleasure speaking to you all. I hope that you guys have a great holiday and finish your week here.